Anyways, uh, we don't have to. This
We don't
for
have
this
any
episode, we don't
great.
have too many. We don't have stories per se, but one of the things that Robert wanted to talk about was the Simpsons episode that that recently came up. That you watched, right?
Well,
You watched again,
yeah. Well, it's a nearly 30-year-old episode at this
right? Yeah,
point. But
it's from like the earlier seasons. But for some reason it kind of put a thorn in Robert's brain, as it were. And so, Robert, why don't you get into it?
okay, so the episode it's from season 2, episode 22, called Blood Feud, and the premise of the episode is Mr. Burns, who he is, at least from his own admission, he's in his 80s. And technically they never age, so technically he's in his 80s throughout the. I mean, although they do make fun of him that he actually is older than that, but at least as far as season 2 goes, we know he's in his 80s, and he ends up developing hypohemia, where like he's pretty much like he has a lack of blood in his system, and he's on his deathbed. And since no one likes Mr. Burns, no one really wants to help him out to give him a blood transfusion.
But he also has really rare blood type.
Yeah, he has a really rare blood type, which but Homer's like, it's like, you guys, I can't believe you guys. You don't want to cash in on like trying to help out a billionaire. So he's doing it for obviously all the selfish reasons.
Right.
And it turns out that Bart has the right blood type, and so he ends up. Homer's like promising, it's like, don't you know that helping out a rich man, he's going to shower you with riches and all this sort of stuff. So Bart acquiesces and decides to give his blood to Mr. Burns, and when he's giving, he's on his deathbed, and it's like giving his epitaph but then the blood transfusion is happening, and as he's doing it, he gets, he gains more and more strength, and he's like, screw this. He has Smithers throw it away, and he gains like all this like energy and vigor from this. And he's like, a quote from the episode is he's saying that it's like, I've tried all these different treatments to prolong my life, and all I needed was a young boy's blood. It's kind of a creepy statement.
Very macabre. Very macabre.
Yeah, but that statement got me thinking. It's like, a lot of this stuff is kind of happening today, because that's kind of like a lot of what we have, like all the like the blood spinning and like the stem cell treatments that people are going through, like in various parts of the world. And it, like, I don't know if it actually, this is why, like, if it actually works. I mean, you kind of also had there's a couple of movies that come to mind. There's a shitty movie that was on MST3K called The Clonus Horror, which is essentially The Island, which was with Ewan McGregor, and I think that was Scarlett Johansson that was in that film too, right?
Yeah.
And so, which the people that wrote The Clonus Horror sued The Island for the writers for The Island, because they stole the movie. But it's just,
really?
It's like old people. Yeah, we'll talk about that at a later time. But
okay,
it's like these old rich people, created these clones of themselves that don't know anything of the outside world other than this island, and they're there essentially for them to steal body parts and blood or whatever else they need to prolong their life, wherever they're at. And there's kind of like a lot of this in like the whole, trying to stay young and fit and to heal injuries and stuff, it kind of reminded me of this whole like stem cell and blood spinning thing that like a lot of athletes and rich people are kind of doing to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I don't know. It kind of creeped me out a little bit. That well, The Simpsons once again predicted another thing. Maybe I don't know if it's on purpose or accident, but um, yeah, I don't know. I wanted to get your thoughts kind of like on that too. I don't know if you've seen the episode, um, or like what your thoughts on all this stuff is.
Yeah, I mean, of course I've seen the episode. Yeah, just the implications of this episode now are pretty horrifying. Because it's not, yeah, because even though just switch out blood for anything else, stem cells, baby foreskins, uh, what have you. It's the same thing. Um,
Right.
and it's
Well,
uh,
that's the thing. It's like because I mean, some would like say that it's oh, it's a conspiracy or it was doctored footage, but we have recorded footage of people like selling like the aborted baby parts, and where it's like, oh well, I can get a certain amount of money for this particular part, especially if it's a little bit more developed. Why would I mean, whether it actually does have these properties or not, it's like, why would that be? And it makes me think that it's kind of this, we like these magic rhino horn shavings and tiger penises that are uh, concoctions that people were using back in the weird pagan times or pagan religions to create these magic potions for
mhm.
themselves.
Right. I mean, it's no different from the idea of like the Aztecs eating the eyes of their enemies to gain like new perspective, or or eating the hearts of your enemy to uh,
Gain their
to
strength.
yeah, to bolster their own strength, because the enemy fought so fiercely. So it's like you're gonna try and take their strength and and make it your own. Uh,
Kalima.
yeah, Kalima. Yes, way to tie it back to our initial conversation. Um, but what was it? Yeah, and so I guess nowadays we're more concerned about youth and vitality, and extending a portion of our life that that should come and go, just as the seasons come and go and flow in and out of each other. It's like you know uh, we all have a season to be hot. I mean, or at least, or to be more accurate, reproductively fertile. And
Yeah.
that's all what physical attraction is supposed to facilitate is reproduction. And it's just like that's one season of our lives, and the idea that people are trying to extend that part is pretty sad if you think about it. Um, when it's just when there's there just like this world, human beings have a time and a season, and and sometimes and yes, the Earth has more of uh, a cyclical season. Humans, have just like kind of a one way deal. Um, it's no less beautiful, it's no less important that we just kind of follow the flow.
The well, it kind of also right. I don't know if you've seen this particular episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, but he had that doctor that like I guess he works in Panama now because it's not something it's funded in America, like it's not a FDA approved treatment. But he had this doctor on and Mel Gibson on at the same time,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and talking about like kind of like the whole stem cell treatment thing, and because I know Joe Rogan swears by it because he had stem cells injected into his shoulder that was going to need surgery, and he said it's like, yeah, I ended up avoiding surgery and not needing it. Mel Gibson swears by it because it essentially brought his dad from the brink of death, and he's still alive today. He's got to be like nearly 100 years old at this point.
Right.
And but then there's also the other cases too where like you hear all like the bad cases of people who are trying to seek out this magical treatment, and then they end up like, not only does it not do anything, but it actually does more harm than good to them. So it's kind of, is it some sort of just uh, I don't know, I don't even know what to think about it, if it's um, uh, it's one of those things because we've been talking. I feel like we've been talking about like the whole stem cell thing for at least a decade now. It feels like
True. Yeah.
I've been hearing about this stuff for about a decade, and ethically, morally, I don't really know what to think about it, to be
Right.
honest.
Because I think one of the kind of icky bits of it is, where do we get the stem cells? Because someone says, because I think that we've been conditioned to think that stem cells are these magical things, and like we just, and they're the cure for what ails you, as it were.
Yeah.
And but we never think about like, where do they come from? And they're yes, even adults have stem cells, but it's not produced as abundantly as or available as when you're a child. And stem cells are kind of like the what is it the kind of one size fits all kind of cell when you're born, or when you're still just a baby, and they kind of fill in the gaps, or if you're kind of low on this type of cell, it'll like go and kind of start becoming that cell that's needed, and it kind of fills a function.
Well, I think to me, it seems like a lot of people are thinking this is like the Lazarus pits, like that Ra's al Ghul from the
Right,
Batman
from Batman.
series.
Right.
It's
But the science isn't as solid as just as all that, where it's like, oh, I just stick it into like my shoulder, and it's like it's brand new. But because there are concerns, like what is it, the cancerous growths, because like, again, because
right.
it's like there's no way of like really controlling it. So like if there's too much, um, if there's too many stem cells in a particular area, like after like the repair has been done, it can lead into the cells becoming cancerous and then multiplying.
Right.
So yeah, the idea of stem cells being this cure all is just, it's just kind of childish thinking. But again, another bone of contention is where do we get the stem cells? And again, the highest concentrations of stem cells is when you're a baby, and and which then brings in the subject of abortions. Because
Well, and I
that's
know
probably where
that's
a good amount of the stem cells are being harvested from the remains of aborted babies.
and I know that this particular doctor that was on the podcast to say, oh, it's used from the like umbilical cord or whatever. So it's it's something that's like cut off, like, you know, as obviously, you know, because we don't have umbilical cords attached to us anymore, obviously.
Right.
So, you know, they're saying that that's what's being used. Well, in this particular doctor, if I remember correctly, was saying is like, what the best stem cells to take from, this is where it's best to use from, not necessarily from like some sort of like fetus or arms or what, you know, what have you. Which, okay, I you know, it's I can, even then, like, if that's really the case, I don't even know like how, like, you know, how good the science is, or, you know, or even how ethical it really is, to be honest.
Right, because you know, the doctor might counter by saying that, oh no, these stem cells are from the umbilical cord, and actually the umbilical cord is the best place to get stem cells. It's like, yes, but once you've aborted the baby, like, isn't the umbilical cord a part of the remains?
Right, and well, it's the and like we might get some backlash. Well, actually, it's guaranteed we'll probably get some backlash on this, but
Mm.
I don't know. It's like I said, I don't necessarily have a uh uh you know, a direct case like, oh, this is, you know, it's wrong or it's
Right.
unscientific.
You don't have a dog in the fight. You don't have a personal anecdote.
I don't have a defined answer. I don't know what to think about it,
Mm-hmm.
but, and like I said, I don't know if it's right or wrong. It just, something just seems a little weird. It kind of, it feels like that the it feels very, you know, kind of vampire like, where we're trying to steal like youth back from the young.
Mm-hmm.
um, and um, yeah, I don't know. And like, just this particular episode from The Simpsons, and I mean, obviously, it's just a blood transfusion. It's not quite the same thing, but it just brought to mind like all this stuff that's happening today that is being like discussed.
Mm-hmm. No, I get it.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know, like, because I've seen this episode probably 100 times, and I don't know why it was like this particular last time that I saw it, that it just brought all this stuff to mind.
Well, probably because you're kind of seeing almost a parallel, or kind of uh, like a mirror image within that episode, because I mean, when you first mentioned that you wanted to talk about this episode, I was like, I know, I immediately knew, I immediately recognized why you wanted to talk about it.
Yeah, and the Simpsons have been fairly accurate in like kind of some of the predictions that they.
Yeah, no, for sure. They've been like prophets,
Yeah, it's kind of scary
predicting the
actually.
things that are happening, like whether it's like the Apple Watch, or Skype, um, or
Uh,
even this blood transfusion thing, to revitalize old people.
Trump
And
becoming
of
president.
course, the biggest thing, President Donald Trump.
The other thing that they had with the with what the hell are those two entertainers with the tiger?
Oh yeah, Siegfried and Roy.
Yeah, thank you, Siegfried and Roy. They got that right.
Hmm.
Although I think we all kind of knew that was eventually going to happen.
We all kind of knew they were little light in their loafers.
All I'm saying is like they got the tiger attacked them. That was my not that they were gay, although that's also
Mm.
so yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what to really think about that,
Hmm.
other than I think just kind of going with the flow, and like, yeah, this is the new miracle treatment. It just feels like this old magic, like magic fix-it formula that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I
like I
don't know.
said, this is the rhino horn and tiger dick stuff that people were doing, thousands of years ago.
Mm. Yeah, I mean
That's what it feels
it's.
like to me. But at what expense? It's like
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting because now this isn't a one to one, but now there's like this whole thing about like vaccines and whether or not children should be forced to or whether or not parents should be compelled by the government to get their children vaccinated when parents aren't informed on like what are what's in these vaccines and let alone like if they're effective at all. But now but there's been this I think a really strong propaganda campaign saying like, oh, you have to do it, or your child will die, and blah blah blah. And some of the parents' reaction has been kind of troubling as well because people say like, oh, your unvaccinated kid is dangerous to my vaccinated kid. It's like
that's another thing. Yeah, that
yeah, but it's
I'm
like
always
but then that logic doesn't work because like your kid is vaccinated, so how is my kid who's not vaccinated putting your kid who's vaccinated in jeopardy? If your kid's vaccinated against the thing and my kid gets it, then my kid should be the only one in danger, not your kid.
This is also another one of those arguments where like I really don't know. And
Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm not
I've heard very credible arguments from both sides on this,
exactly, and
and
I'm not trying to make. I'm not coming down on either side either because I haven't done enough of the research myself to have a strong argument for or against, but just the argument that I hear that from parents who say like, oh, if you don't get your kid vaccinated, then you're putting my kid in danger. It's like
it feels very
it's like
like
telling
it
it's
feels a
like
lot like
telling
spurious thinking.
telling the parent of a kid, let's say it's wintertime and there's snow out, and one parent puts a coat on their kid and another parent doesn't put a coat on their kid, and it's like the parent that put the coat on that kid saying like, oh, because your kid is not wearing a coat is gonna endanger my kid. Like, how? Your kid is wearing a coat, he'll be fine. My kid is not wearing a coat, and so I'll it'll whatever happens to him happens.
Yeah. There's a lot of like there. Then there's the arguments where it feels like a lot of spurious thought, where it's just like, how did you come? How did you? Okay, you've been injected with this, vaccine that we don't know what's in there, but then it's and like okay, then nothing happens to you, so that means like that it worked. But then there are cases where there's some people who don't have certain vaccinations, and then also nothing happens to them. So it's it kind of feels like the whole thing we've been talking about is like is it just some like woo like wizardry that's going on? I don't know. Um, I mean, hell, I remember. Maybe part of it is because we do live in the U.S. where there are some of these diseases are not quite as rampant.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember like from when I started doing cross country in high school, I had been vaccinated as like a little kid, but then there was the other stuff that like my mom like never got me vaccinated for, but I
Mm-hmm.
never got sick. It was one of those that, like I
Right.
really didn't, but it was for me to compete in a sport at school. I had to go through a physical and get these vaccinations done, and I end up having to get like I think like all of them like at once because I didn't have like there was like 8 of them that I had to get, and it's just oh my god, it was the worst. I hated it so much
Mm.
because I don't like getting shots. And then even like when I was in the Navy, there was other ones that I had to get too.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I like I said, I don't know what to think about that. at all. Like I haven't really done the research, but I know like there's a lot of people that think like some of these vaccinations have caused autism in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, or at least have ramped it up quite a bit.
Right.
And like I said, we really don't know what causes it
Mhm.
either.
Right.
So
And it's like it could be anything. It could be a lack of of playing outdoors. Playing in the mud. Lack of exposure. You know. Because
yeah,
like
we really
because like
don't.
now even doctors are saying like when your child eats their boogers, let them, because that's like a safe way of exposing them to like germs that they can eventually develop an immunity to.
And a lot of that, I don't know, it feels like very anecdotal evidence too, because I'm in the belief that we kind of treat each other as like, oh, we're just this like unified body that like everyone's kind of the same,
Mm-hmm.
but in reality like our bodies are all kind of unique in a certain way, because I think like there's certain people who they have different metabolism levels. They certain foods, like they react differently to certain foods. They certain diets work better than other times, like, and
Right. Yeah. So yeah,
uh,
there's no typical reaction.
right. And I think of back in history is uh, Theodore Roosevelt, who had all sorts of ailments as a kid. Like he had asthma, and he was kind of a sickly little kid that like had, but his I think like his family like kind of forced him. It's like they kind of forced him to do outdoorsy type stuff to kind of force him to overcome all these things. And um, you could say it's like, well, it was just kind of like sheer willpower that helped him to overcome a lot of and at least that's what it seems like from all the stories that I've read about him.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like he just kind of forced himself to overcome these frailties that he had, and
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of a wild man in a lot of in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So and I don't know, maybe there is a certain aspect of that where yeah, you have all these we do live in an age where like, oh, you got a little scrape on your knee, well, don't go outside anymore.
Mm-hmm.
um or like, oh, you're kind of sick, so like not even like, because there's a difference between like really sick, because when I get sick, like I'm out, like I can't do anything, like I feel terrible, like I
Mm-hmm.
literally can't lift like my arms and get out of bed. That's how bad it is. But then it's like there are some kids where like they'll sneeze and it's like, oh well, stay home. And I don't know if like the body develops like a weakness, like, oh well, okay, I'm sick, so time to just
Yeah.
like I had to just stay home. And
Yeah. I never had
instead of,
that problem because my mother was crazy.
oh yeah, well same here, because
Yeah.
like are you
I
like
mean, yeah, I
my
told you
mom.
that story, right, about when I was. Oh, this is back when I was in high school, but I told you that story, right?
No, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, I was like, it was in high school, and I was sick, and I had and then I'd overslept, and so like school had already started, and then so I went to go inform my mother, who worked, I went to go tell my mom, like, hey mom, I'm late already, um, and I'm feeling sick, so I think I'm gonna stay home. And the first words out of her mouth were, "What about perfect attendance?"
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because up until that point, yes, I would have had perfect attendance in high school.